Hello friends, today we'll be learning about Digital Rights Management Part 2. You are already aware that in DRM Part 1 we have covered basics of the DRM, information and functional architecture of the DRM and legal issues associated with DRM. Whereas in this module we will be talking about the need of access management, the tools and technologies deployed for authentication and authorization, the tools and techniques to control the usage of e-resources and tracking the misuse of the same, as well as technologies applied for secure digital communication. The digital rights management in a digital library consists of following four components, that are license agreement and policies, user authentication and authorization, accuracy and integrity of digital content, and accessibility, including permissions to operate on digital objects or its metadata. License agreements and policies for access to digital libraries are negotiated between the publishers and the librarians or information managers. The users are authenticated and authorized to access the content of the digital library as per the terms and conditions of license agreement. Users duly authenticated are allowed to access to information according to the nature of their clearance and authority. Unauthorized users are blocked from accessing the information. Confidentiality or trusted relationship is of paramount importance in digital library containing highly proprietary information. Accuracy or integrity means the continuing integrity of information stored in digital object server. Digital library must not allow accidental or intentional corruption of information that is stored in it by unauthorized users or programs. Accessibility means that a secure computer system must keep information available to its users. The system should be able to recover quickly in case of disaster, as well as users are given access to digital content with the permission to download in case of user and to add, edit or delete or amend in case of editors. It is not only essential to ensure the security of data on the servers, but also during the communication between clients and servers and vice versa to ensure authenticity and integrity of the data. The techniques of data encryption are used for communicating sensitive information such as users' password and personal identification number codes, that is PIN codes. Encryption renders data unintelligible and unusable even if accessed by an unauthorized person. Digital certificates are deployed to establish secure communication between clients and servers. Let us discuss the need of access management and security. Access management and computer security are two important issues in all commercial web applications, including digital libraries. Electronic content can be copied much more easily. Content owners have a great need of imposing measures to control misuse of their content in digital format. IP authentication and password access, two most commonly used authentication methods, are still not able to protect the content from being duplicated or shared. Thus, there is a need of greater rights management controls. Digital media distribution can bring a variety of new business opportunities for owners or generators of the content who incorporate the right technologies to use to control access to their digital content. Access management is necessary for commercial digital collection because their access is restricted to subscriber or licensed users. In case if access to digital collection is provided openly, the access control is required for assigning the responsibilities for operations such as addition, updation, addition, and deletion of full text content as well as its metadata. A well-managed digital library requires tracking of all the changes so that the collection can be restored if mistakes are made or computer files are corrupted. The user authentication is first level of security mechanism to protect a computer system hosting digital libraries from unauthorized users. Authentication basically means ascertaining credential of a user that allow him or her to establish the rights to use a network identity. Login passwords and IP filterings are two methods that are commonly deployed for authenticating users. User authentication mechanism can be incorporated into firewall, a particular application, a document, a network operating system such as Linux, Unix or Windows. Now let us discuss authentication mechanisms. The first one is login ID and password based access. This is the most common mean of access control requiring the matching of a username with its associated password. Login ID and password allow publishers or producer of information to control access to their electronic resources. The two types of password are fixed passwords and dynamic passwords. In fixed password, user authentication is most often performed with the fixed assigned password. It remains vulnerable to guessing, and password can be misused to access digital content as it can be passed around by the users in subscribing institution. In case of dynamic password, you must be aware that it is also possible to generate a chain of dependent or interdependent one-time password to the users. Since it is very difficult to remember several passwords, user will be forced to keep the list somewhere either on paper or in a file on their computers. Nowadays, software solutions are available to manage the login ID and passwords. The challenge response authentication. It is used to prove identity of a user to the server by demonstrating knowledge of a secret that is known to user and the server. Once a user sends a proper response to the challenge, user may again be prompted to answer another challenge concerned with the identity of the user. It is also being implemented with hardware token. The HTTP/1.1 digest authentication standard, which is implemented in all popular browsers, is an example of software-based challenge response scheme. These authentication mechanisms are designed to resist replay attack so that an adversary should not be able to reuse a particular response to authenticate in another session with another challenge. These challenge response protocols are also used to assert things other than knowledge of secret values. CAPTCHAs, for example, are meant to determine whether a viewer of a web application is a real person or a computer program. The challenge sent to the viewer is a distorted image of some text, and the viewer responds it by typing in that text. You might have seen that in Yahoo or Google, etc. The distortion is designed to make automated optical character recognition, that is OCR. This makes it difficult and prevent a computer program from passing by as a human. Cryptographic-based challenge response authentication involves using the password as the encryption key to transmit randomly generated information as a challenge, whereupon the other end must return as its response in a similarly encrypted value. IP filtering can be also used as authentication mechanism. The IP address is a numerical address assigned to every device connected to the internet in order to identify and communicate with each other. An IP version 4 contains 4 parts separated by dots, whereas in IPv6 there are 8 groups of 4 hexadecimal digits separated by colons. Every machine that is on internet has a unique IP address. This IP can also be dynamically assigned by a service provider. IP filtering is relatively easy to implement for a subscribing institution who is required to provide IP address or its range to the publisher. The publisher in turn requires to maintain a database of IP addresses that are enabled to access its electronic resources and check all incoming requests for digital materials against its IP database. Most publishers prefer providing IP-based access to their resources. The IP-based access poses a problem for those who are not on campus or while traveling. HTTP cookies or web cookies are parcel of the text sent by a server to web browser and then sent back unchanged by the browser each time it accesses that server. HTTP cookies are used for authenticating, tracking, and maintaining specific information about the users, such as the site preferences and content of their electronic shopping carts. Authentication information are stored in cookies on a user's browser so that user does not require to provide repeated authentication information when navigating from resource to resource. Most browser allows users to decide whether to accept cookies or not, but rejection makes some websites unusable. Cookies are generally used for authentication in combination with other authentication mechanisms such as login ID, password, or IP filtering. The proxy server is a combination of software and hardware that acts as an intermediary between users and internet. Proxy enables authorized users of an institution to access licensed electronic resources when connected to the internet from outside the premises or from their institution. EZ-Proxy is one of the popular proxy server programs that is easy to set up and maintain. User connects to EZ-Proxy, which in turn connects on their behalf to the subscribed e-resources and obtain requested web pages and send them back to the users. EZ-Proxy runs on a machine on the network of subscribing institution. E-resource publisher sees the request as coming from an authorized IP address and permits the express. EZ-Proxy works by dynamically altering the URL within the web pages provided by the publisher of e-resources. Single sign-on solutions can also be used as authentication mechanism. The Open Athens is an access and identity management service by EduServe Technologies Limited. It provides secure single sign-on facility to multiple subscription-based web resources. Open Athens replaces the multiple username and password necessary to accept subscription-based content with a single username and password that can be entered once per session. It operates independently of user's location or IP address. At present, over 4.5 million users worldwide are using Open Athens to gain access to over 400 protected online resources via Athens service. Referring URL is a method for enabling authentication based on the URL. Users generally visit various digital libraries through their library's websites. When a user clicks on a link given in a web page, the user's browser sends a request to the click URL along with the URL of referring site. This site along URL is called referring URL. The referring URL can be used for authenticating a user. Kerberos. Kerberos is an IETF-defined authentication protocol. It allows individuals communicating over an insecure network to prove their identity to one and another in a secure manner utilizing a trusted third party called Key Distribution Center or KDC. It is also a suite of free software published by MIT which implements this protocol. In Kerberos protocol, messages are protected against eavesdropping and replay attacks as it uses symmetric key cryptography that requires a trusted third party. Extension to Kerberos can also provide for the use of public key cryptography during authentication. Kerberos protocols are used in web server programs like Apache, routers, switches, internetwork operating systems, email clients, operating systems, LDAP, FTP, and Telnet Kerberos enable clients. So far we have talked about authentication. Now let's talk about user authorization. As we have seen, the process of authentication ascertains the identity of a user, while authorization defines the permission in terms of access to e-resources and extent of its usage. Authorization is granted to the successfully authenticated users according to rights information available in access management system. A user duly authenticated by one of the authentication mechanism may actually be entitled to access only a portion of digital collection subscribed by user institution. Typically, all users in an institution are authorized to access all the subscribed e-resources. However, it is possible to define different levels of authorization for different categories of personnel in an institution. Besides, authorizing users also addresses the issue of responsibilities assigned to the different personnels involved in development of a digital library and their respective authorities in terms of addition, deletion, editing, and uploading of records into a digital library. There are various mechanisms which can be deployed for authorization. Access control is one method for enforcing authorization. Typically, it assumes that the user or entity has already been authenticated. Access control policies that are mandatory access control, discriminatory access control, role-based access control, and content-dependent access control. In mandatory access control, it is generally more suited for high security authorization. It is based on classification of the objects and users according to security level, where access is granted only if security levels of objects and users match or users level is higher. Whereas in discretionary access control, DAC is based on user's identity and authorization. For example, if a user provides evidence like attribute certificate that he or she has a capability to execute certain operation on an object, then the evidence is checked and access is granted based on validity of that evidence. Role-based access control is based on assigning roles to users. Users can gain authority based on roles at the time of the request. This is similar to implementation of access control mechanism available in all popular operating systems like Windows or Linux, where users gain authorization depending on his or her roles like administrator, power user, backup operator, which have necessary authority to perform required activities. Different type of access control or combination of these are suitable for different applications and security requirements. Content-dependent access control, that is CDAC, while most of the digital libraries provide access to it content based on qualification and characteristics of the users rather than their identity, digital library may also be designed to provide content-dependent authorization to its collection. For an example, a user will be given access to a rated video based on his age. There are various technologies for access control and access tracking. A number of copy protection and access control technologies have been devised that would either restrict or completely stop unauthorized use of copyrighted material. Digital watermarking is one of them. It is a technique which allows embedding of visible or invisible copyright notice or other verification message in digital document, audio, video, or image signals. The technique takes its name from watermarking of paper or money as a security measure. Digital watermarking can be a form of steganography in which data is hidden in the message without end user's knowledge. This system doesn't prevent copying, but it ensures that copies made of the media will be traceable to a particular copy and perfect to a particular user. Visible watermark is a secondary translucent image overlaid into a primary digital image. A simple example of digital watermark is a visible logo or insignia placed over a digital material to identify the copyright. Invisible watermark do not change the signal to a perceptually great extent, so that there are only minor variations in an output signal. Fractional or partial access. Digital libraries are often designed to allow users to access individual records or articles, but not copy complete collection so as to prevent massive abuse of copyrighted material. Most of the journal hosting sites discourage robotic or systematic download of articles. Most online journal hosting platform monitors systematic and excessive download of journal articles from its site and cut off the users doing such activities. eBrary, for example, allow only chapter of books for downloading. One can also control the interface of the content. The producers of database and other materials on CD-ROM relied on proprietary software to access and display digital contents of a CD-ROM. The formats of contents as well as the interface are designed to access it was proprietary. It was therefore hard to arrange the access the material on CD-ROM unless accompanied with the proprietary interface. Applications where web browser is the de facto interface to access the web, this method has limited applications. Flickering is a method used for allowing users to read information on the screen but not capture it by screen dumping. This method takes advantage of ability of human eye to capture rapidly changing images. The computer screen dump will capture the instantaneous appearance and therefore would capture the background bits in the process of flickering, and resulting screen image would be useless. The digital object identifier is a character string or a digital identifier used to uniquely identify an object such as electronic document. The DOI system is implemented through a federation of registration agencies coordinated by the International DOI Foundation, which developed and controls the system. The digital object identifier is a mechanism for marking digital objects so as to identify them and enable copyright management and access in digital environment. The DOI doesn't change over the time, even if the article is relocated. However, a DOI resolution system is required to be updated when the change of location is made. Authentication of the digital content. Authentication of the digital content refers to continuing integrity and accuracy of information stored in digital object servers. The digital library must not allow accidental or intentional corruption of information stored in it by unauthorized users or programs. The techniques of digital signature and digital watermarking described next are used for authentication of digital object. A digital signature is electronic signature that can be used to authenticate the identity of a sender of a message or the signer of a document. It can be also used to authenticate that the original content of the message or document that has been conveyed is unchanged. To check whether a file has been tampered or not, MD5 hash value is calculated at the time of its creation and recalculated later to compare it with original. If the two are same, then the files are almost certainly the same. Digital signature can be applied to guarantee the authenticity of a digital object. Digital watermarking places a hidden data such as a unique disk. The technique allows embedding of a visible or invisible copyright notices or other verification messages in digital documents, audio, video, or image signal. It is a group of bits describing information pertaining to the image or its author or a unique ID. The technique takes its name from watermarking of a paper or money as a security measure as described earlier. It is not only essential to ensure security of data on digital object servers, but also during the communication between server, client, and vice versa to ensure authenticity and integrity of the data. It is possible for a hacker to eavesdrop on communication between user's browser and a web browser. Technology of data encryption and digital certificates deployed to establish secure communication between client and server. Encryption is used in digital rights management to restrict the use of copyrighted material and in software copy protection to protect against reverse engineering and software piracy. Standards and cryptographic software and hardware to perform encryption are widely available. Encryption has its application in digital certificates. The digital certificates are electronic files that are used to authenticate the web resources, users, and organizations over the internet to ensure integrity of the content. Digital certificates are part of the technology called PKI, the public key infrastructure, that includes organizations called CAs, certification authorities, that issue, manage, and revoke digital certificate. Organizations called relying parties who use the certificate as indicators of authentication, and the client who requests, manage, and use the certificates. A CA might create a separate registration authority RA to handle the task of identifying individuals who apply for the certificate. The digital certificates are based on public key cryptography, which uses a pair of key, that is private and a public key, for encryption and decryption. It contains, among all other things, the name, a serial number, expiration date, a copy of certificate holder's public key, and the digital signature of certificate issuing authority, that is CA, so that a recipient can verify that the certificate is genuine. The recipient of encrypted message uses CA's public key to decode the digital certificate attached to the message, and then obtains sender's public key and identification information held within certificate to send an encrypted reply. Digital certificate forms the basis of secured communication and client and server authentication on the web. The digital certificates can be used to verify the identity of the clients and servers on the web, encrypt the channels to provide secure communication between client and servers, encrypt the messages for secure internet email communication, verify the sender's identity for internet email messages. One can put digital signature on executable code that users can download from the web. It can be also helpful to verify the source and integrity of the signed executable code that users can download from the web. The illustration shows the basic process of public and private keys to encrypt and decrypt the message sent over the internet. Most web browsers have several digital certificates pre-installed in them. Web browsers use digital certificates to secure access to website without knowledge of the users. There are different types of digital certificate, each with different functions. Digital certificate can be grouped into following four major categories, that is, root or authority certificate. These are the certificates that create the base of a certification authority hierarchy. These are not signed by another CA. They are self-signed by CA that created them. Institutional authority certificate. These certificates are also called campus certificates. These are signed by third party, verifying the authenticity of a campus certification authority. Campuses can use their authority to issue the client certificate for faculty, staff, student and other members. The client certificates. These are also known as an entity certificates or identity certificates or personal certificates. Client certificates are generally issued by campus CA. Web server certificates. These are the certificates used to secure communications to and from web servers. The subject name in a web server certificate is DNS name of the server. So we have seen that the DRM refers to control the access of the digital libraries. The tools and technology deployed with DRM deals with prevention of unauthorized access, duplication and illegal usage of copyrighted digital media. In online environment, the scope of DRM can be leveraged to control access and usage of digital objects and impose restriction on their misuse.